Hello and welcome to another instalment of the Full Force Monthly, brought to you by Hoarder, the collector's app. In this regular series, we get stuck into specific G.I. Joe related topics with different special guest hosts every single month. Well, kind of. So, who's joining me on this episode? Well, first up, we have Full Force Weekly co-host regular Joe Declassified alum and one half of the awesome Articulated Points YouTube channel, Patrick Notpicard Stewart. We also have a very talented artist who most recently revealed his work on Super 7's G.I. Joe Reaction Arctic Rescue set box art, Adam, Mercenary For Hire Riches. We thought we would get stuck into the Classified series with a discussion regarding the current design direction of the line, how it started versus how it's going. So let's get stuck in, shall we? What is it, Pat?
It's the Full Force Monthly.
Yes, it bloody well is. It's the Full Force Monthly. Yeah, apologies for being a couple of days into the month. I know we usually drop it on the 1st, but we've had just such an absolute mission trying to get availability, haven't we, guys? Starting with Adam, obviously, you've been on this show more than, almost more than Pat, which is crazy, which isn't the case, I don't think. How are you doing, buddy?
Busy. If you think I've been on it now, just wait till I use you as a promotional tool in like 6 months when I've got all this stuff coming out. But yeah, it's my world has been kind of G.I. Joe 24/7 lately, which is exciting, and I wish I could say more about that, but soon.
I just want to point out behind you your Arctic Rescue set box art. Isn't that awesome?
Super 7.
Dude, I was really excited when you dropped that news. Is there anything you can tell us about it in this very short, brief intro?
Yeah, it was, when I wrapped up the stuff with the club in January 2018, honestly, at that time, there was a lot of question marks about when or if I would ever get to work on G.I. Joe again. And I mean, I hoped and maybe assumed I would, but, things were so up in the air as far as what was happening and when and where. And so it was sort of to my surprise and delight when Super 7 reached out one day and said, hey, we've got the G.I. Joe license. I said, well, what? And they said, we're going to be doing some interesting stuff here, and we wanted to know if you wanted to be on board. And I was like, what are we talking about? And they said, that episode with the blind woodsman and Snake? I was like, oh, what? So that's pretty much the origin story of that, and I've been sitting on it for the better part of a year, waiting to be able to talk about it. So
that's awesome, man. And we can definitely get stuck into that on another episode another time, because I think I'd love to get into all of the details and intricacies of that whole process. It sounds really fun as well. Pat, mate, good to see you as well, buddy. I know we've gone in a similar green tone today on the show. Last week we wore the same Snake Eyes clothing, and now we're wearing similar clothes again. What's this? I'm not even sending you memos on what I'm going to wear.
Yeah, we're just matching. It's working out. It's awesome.
We're on the same level, aren't we? How are you feeling, buddy?
I'm feeling all right. Yeah, not too bad. A little tired as usual, but I'm fine.
I love it. We got a tired Pat and an absolutely under the cosh Adam. I'm fine. I'm just chilling, just
high energy.
Yeah, full force. Anyway,
yeah.
Let's get stuck into what we're actually here to do today, and that is to talk about the Classified series. Okay then, let's get started with our main topic, and that's the Classified series' current design direction. Now, it's no secret that the G.I. Joe Classified series has seen a shift in its design style from Wave 1 way back in 2020 to the current crop of figures. Initially starting as a more futuristic aesthetic with Nerf blasters and gold and silver armor pieces, to a vintage-inspired design more akin to the original Real American Hero figures. With that said, guys, let's start with that original design aesthetic. When it first came out, I was at the Hasbro preview event when they first kind of revealed, not really Snake Eyes, but the rest of the team. And from what I could see, and from a lot of the chatter online, people were very kind of mixed in their feelings with how the design was being kind of put out there. A lot of people wanted straight up vintage, and a lot of people were kind of I suppose, more open to this kind of new design kind of aspect. How did you guys feel? Pat, start with you, mate.
I was interested in it. There were some of them I think that landed a little bit better than others, but I think that that's to be expected. Anytime you change the style of something or you redesign something, you're going to have varying opinions because everybody jumped on board of G.I. Joe, loving the original G.I. Well, maybe not everybody, but most of us jumped on loving the original G.I. Joe, or at least the 80s, which technically isn't the original.
Everyone jumped on loving the 82 to 83.
We all came in at some point and agreed on these characters and enjoyed them.
Yeah.
And anytime you change that up, I think that some people are going to embrace the changes, and some of those changes just aren't going to happen. It's the same thing with changing the style of an animation of a show.
Yeah.
You're going to have some people enjoy it and some just aren't. And that's fine, because maybe that new style is something that would have never initially caught on with those same people. So it's just kind of a thing that I accept the fact that some people aren't going to like every new design, and they probably shouldn't. It's fine to not just like every single thing.
Like me.
And whenever I saw it, there were some of them that I thought were better than others. I really liked the sculpt of the face on Scarlet. That was something that stood out to me as one that I really liked, but I liked that one a lot better than Duke.
Yeah. I think when they first rolled out that group of figures, that first wave, I was drawn to Roadblock because of the very similar version 2 kind of connection. I didn't mind the gold aspects. There was a lot of kind of that kind of stuff was kind of on there, wasn't it? There was like a mixture of a few signposts, but then in kind of Scarlet's case, I think they went quite further away from that character in terms of the design. And I think when I look back at them all now, I think Scarlet's head sculpt's gorgeous, but I look at that figure and I feel like it's probably the furthest away from most of those designs. I mean, what were your thoughts, Adam, when you first saw that first wave?
Kind of like Pat. I think that I was an O-ring collector like everybody else, and then when Modern Era came out, or I should backtrack, even when Battle vs. Venom, Spy Troops, when that stuff was coming out, I was, there's always that weird adjustment period where you're I don't know how I feel about this. And I think part of it is because you're invested both emotionally and financially for such a long stretch of time that's a very hard adjustment to make. And I think probably the two biggest leaps for me out of all of my years of collecting were Sigma 6 and Classified, because at least everything else was relatively in scale to the point that, obviously Extreme is aesthetically different, but size-wise not, crazy out of left field. But when you're doing something like Classified, you are completely starting over. And so I actually, for years naturally assumed, as I saw action figures all going to 6 inches, that it was probably the inevitability that G.I. Joe would get there one day. I think my biggest concern at that time was, I hope that they're not just going to make big versions of the figures that we already have, like 6-inch Gentle Giant, basically. You know what I mean? I hope that they evolve the design somehow. And so I actually was really excited when the first set of Classified drops were shown. Not so much because I wanted core characters again, or because they were my favorite designs I'd ever seen or anything, but just because they tried something different. I think that was the thing that really landed with me, much like Pursuit of Cobra. I just want to see it evolve.
I feel we spoke about this with Pursuit of Cobra a little while back, didn't we? About the fact that because Pursuit of Cobra came at a point where you already have loads of the vintage inspired kind of figures, we already had about 6 Rakondos at that point, and then you get this new one and it's whoa, that's amazing, and lots of other things like that. We actually spoke about this, didn't we, about the Classified line and how the difference is you didn't have the 6-inch figures of your classic that you want to I feel like more casual people would be picking up too, because they would have done that thing where they go, I had that as a kid. No, you didn't have that as a kid. Obviously you didn't, but you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying. So yeah, I feel, but I was with you. I really enjoyed the fact that they were doing something slightly different, and I kind of dug the Nerf guns. I've been wanting to get Nerf G.I. Joe kind of stuff for ever, and I'm still surprised that hasn't happened. What is going on there? Seriously, what is going on? Why have we not got Nerf G.I. Joe blasters? Anyway, that's for another time, I guess. Okay, so we come out of this original design. Oh, well, we don't come out of it immediately. we get obviously more and more releases that are kind of, gung ho. Actually, they kind of tempered the gold, so that they were listening to the fans, because a lot of fans were kind of going on about this gold thing, weren't they? I mean, did that bother you at all, Pat?
The way I kind of feel about it is, whenever I see a design, I like them to go all in. I would like them to, if they're going to make it look just like the vintage figure, then make it look just like the vintage style. If they're going to go with something new and add these bits of armor, I would like to see them, do what the initial plan was. I know whenever like Major Blood hit, I looked at that and thought that, this is really cool, but it definitely looks like it's been scaled back from some of the things that they may have been doing with like the art that was on the package with his eye being like a robot eye instead of an eye patch. They kind of took the red out of it in order to downplay that. So, if they're going to do a design, I would like them to go all in. And I think that, like we were saying before, if they have the one that hits that vintage style very well, that really opens them up to go even farther away from that in the future. So when they're hitting ones that are like, well, Gung Ho, I don't think that one was a particularly bad one, because he was in green, and I think that a green Gung Ho has made sense for a long time. And yeah, he was a large departure from the original. I think the hat could have been better right out of the gate on that one. But what he was wearing, I didn't think was bad.
Yeah.
Some of the ones that may have been a little bit too close to the vintage while not going full vintage, I would say it would maybe be Flint or even Major Blood. I liked those, but I would have liked to have seen it be, we get a vintage inspired one, and then we get them. Then the floodgates are open and they can do what they want with another one. That's kind of what I would like.
It seems to me like they're working with a tight kind of budget, so they're kind of like having they're having to make serious
too. You can tell that.
Serious decisions on what characters to kind of fit in the lineup, and that obviously makes sense for repaints. Obviously, reusing tooling seems to be a big kind of thing as well. And then also, like you say, that big design change, that kind of that was clearly happening, wasn't it? I mean, they've talked about it as well. But it just felt like all of a sudden there was like a big change in what they were kind of going for, and obviously they couldn't implement it immediately because they already had figures in production by the looks of things, and that seems to be what happened with Bat and Alley Viper too. I feel like they, obviously Alley Viper, we've got that art on the back, haven't we, Adam? That we were talking about for years, for a year, of like, when is this coming out? And then when it finally comes out, you can see there are clear differences on that to the art, can't you?
Yeah, the Alley Viper is very reflective of the vintage and even somewhat the 25th figure, as opposed to the classified original design, which you can actually see some of those parts did emerge in other figures. I think in one of the shops, I believe he's holding Duke's rifle, and I think he has the arms from the Cobra officer. So
yeah.
You can tell there was going to be a little more sort of early classified crossover there. As far as the design shift, I'm looking at the General Joe's Reborn classified super page right now, and it looks to me like you don't really start to see a serious shift back towards vintage until probably wave 4. So I think that gives you some indication just how far in advance. I think that you started to see the deco shift in wave 2, but it looks like there was almost a full year planned out that was pretty much in the can, that were irreversible at that point.
Oh, definitely. Because obviously we got a lot of images from the factory, didn't we, of like the Bat parts and the Alley Viper parts. So that there was something was happening specifically with those figures, and I feel like that was the what they were the two that could probably affect the most within the pivot of this change. But I mean, Jay, I thought she looked pretty cool. I didn't think she was still similar to kind of her vintage style, but there was definitely like a lot of upgrades going on with her figure. Flint, I know you mentioned Flint as one of they kind of stuck close to him, but I thought he was the one that I thought him and Beachhead have got a good balance of vintage going into with a few updates. Do you know what I mean? With more than just a vintage figure but bigger. They had some nice updates, the secondaries and all that kind of stuff. I mean, who out of the lineup so far do you think for you is like a good balance, or like, you know, if that's, you know, where you kind of see it anyway. I mean, Adam, are there any that strike you as like a really good balance figure?
As far as leaning slightly into the future and not feeling too vintage inspired, I really like some of those early figures. I mean, I think Zartan is pretty amazing. Like,
yeah, good point.
There's a lot of elements there that are sort of nice, unexpected things that fit the character well. The Red Ninja was a really interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'm just scrolling Justin's page here. I mean, you know, there's a lot of these figures that I think really worked well, and I do want to say this, like, you know, because I work in toy design, I have a great deal of respect for the people that are working on this stuff, and I realize that there are so many challenges and complications that people probably have no idea about. I mean, budgetary and production timelines and everything else, and then on top of that, trying to balance that with this, you know, lightning speed internet feedback, and then trying to gauge with that feedback how much of this is viable, because realistically the internet, you're looking at, you know, 5 to 10,000 very vocal people, when in reality you're selling to tens of thousands all over the world, not just the United States. And so I think when you've got all that feedback being thrown at you from 20 different directions, from marketing, from management, from the fans, trying to figure out a way to balance that and come up with something that will make everyone happy on a brand that has 50 years of history,
it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible, isn't it? Like, yeah. Do you think it's a case sometimes of do your thing, just do it, put it out there. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Do you think there's an element of that should be kind of put towards some of this sometimes, or do you think that there is merit though in taking lots of that feedback on? Do you think there's a balance in there somewhere?
I think it's a degree of both. If you look at a line like WWE, I use them as an example a lot because they're a really evergreen brand.
Because they have 1 trillion figures out.
Yeah, well, and they have weekly TV, so the media never stops to promote it. But I think they do a really good mix with every assortment of trying to get some classic guys in, some modern guys, and then some really young talent that's barely even been on TV. Like, they try to really keep the assortments very, you know, very varied, I guess. And I feel like the only way that you would ever even come close to pleasing a fandom that's as splintered as G.I. Joe's would be to follow a similar, you know, something that's very slavish to the vintage design, something that's very out of the box, forward thinking, and you know, maybe in a couple of left field picks, like a comic character or some, you know, a totally new character that's never had a figure that you can't really have an opinion on. Like, I think that's the only way you're ever going to check all those boxes, because G.I. Joe as a brand means so many things to so many people, you know, that it's really hard to know what the right direction to go is. I mean, my inclination would probably be, I'm just going to do whatever I want because I'm the designer, and if you don't like it, oh well. But, like, you know, that doesn't always fly. So
no, yeah, totally true on that one. I agree with you. I think they have a terrible job on their hands. Like, you know, with any fandom, I feel like. And could you imagine? I mean, you know probably better than most, Adam, because you obviously have to put your artwork out there for public scrutiny on a massive scale. So, like, I mean, so you have like some idea of this, but that feeling of like pouring your heart and soul into it and just putting it out there and just hoping people enjoy it, but then when you start getting feedback like that must be quite... I mean, how is it for you? Do you feel that, like, every comment? Do you feel that within your soul?
I'm going to say no because the haters are watching, but no. No, I think a lot of it for me personally, it depends on the source. You know, if I'm hearing from Ron Rudat or Kirk Bazigian or somebody like, hey, you know, I love this, I'm like, okay, that landed for me. Like, this is somebody that, you know, has been in the trenches, that did the things that inspired me to do the things I'm doing.
Yeah.
And if it's, you know, G.I. Joe fan _5678, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I'm not saying that I value their opinion any less. Like, I want to make everyone happy, but I've also come to accept over the last 10 years that's simply impossible. Yeah. So I think you just do what you can do. And also, the other thing, though, and this applies to the figure designs as well, there is so much thought and effort, at least for me, and I'm sure this applies to everyone, that goes into these minuscule details that I don't think ever get discussed, that probably no one has any concept of. And so, in my mind, I'm thinking, I stared at this same image for 30 hours. You looked at it for 2 seconds and made a judgment call. And so, I think that's also part of how you develop a thicker skin about this stuff, because it's like I see these comments and I know that it was flippant. You know, they haven't meticulously thought over every little trivial detail the way I have, because there is a rhyme and reason to every single thing that's done, and whether that reason is budgetary or because it was, you know, forced upon you by marketing or whatever. Like, I think it's very unlikely in toy design that something was just, you know, I'll just throw this at the wall and see what sticks.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. There's, and I think especially with a company like Hasbro, there are just too many cogs in that system for it to be that simple.
The multiple emails I get every day would definitely agree with that.
Right. Yeah. Cool. I mean, Pat. I mean, you know, let's talk. Let's switch it to you, because I've just been talking to Adam for like the last 10 minutes, and that's not fair. When the let's talk about the current design aesthetic. Are you happy they're going in this direction? Is this something that you... Phoebe seems to be happy with the current thing, I think. Can't tell. What is your current feelings on the current design direction?
It's like I said, I think that they need to get out a few figures. Like, now that we have barbecue out, and I don't think anybody is going to be clamoring for one that looks more similar to his vintage style, I think that leaves them open to doing something entirely different. Maybe, you know, maybe people will want to Slaughter's Marauders barbecue at some point. But now they could really put out an Eco Warriors one, or an even just crazy something that they come up with that is just based on some firefighter gear or something that is just, that totally inspired them. Like, if they see something cool and they want to make a new barbecue, I think that as long as it actually is a good-looking figure that is cool, it'll do well. And they're not held down to trying to make a vintage-style barbecue, for example. But yeah, there's definitely some things that I look at and I just... I do like the pivot for Storm Shadow, actually. I mean, we had that art that's been around forever for Storm Shadow, and that's probably one of the ones that's taken the longest, because he's still not here. The one that we got from Amazon was, I think, meant to be a version 2 within the classified line. We were most definitely supposed to get the one we've seen in the sticker set and in other art and online, and it just hasn't materialized. And then we saw the Storm Shadow that we are getting, and it's very different. And you can kind of see pieces of these things. At least I think there are pieces of them that you're seeing in other places. Like, if you look at that Storm Shadow, he still has the same throwing stars that are very unique looking. So I think he retained that. Most of the figure otherwise is different.
Yeah.
And I'm still not sure if the knees on Bat are actually the knees that were pictured. They at least look like it to me. I could be wrong, but they kind of look like they're the knees that are on that Storm Shadow art. So I'm wondering how much of the stuff that we previously saw that didn't get used may end up trickling out into other places. Like, that's a whole lot of ninja on Storm Shadow that didn't get released. If that was sculpted, are we going to see those ninja parts somewhere down the road? You know, could that head that people are calling like a Mortal Kombat inspired Storm Shadow end up somewhere else?
N95 Storm Shadow.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Or the leg armor. You know, all the pieces there, they now have those assets. Are those going to get repurposed? Like, that's the kind of thing that it interests me. If you look at Bat's feet, you know, they are very traditional looking, but then he has that bit of armor that's kind of on the top of the foot that, if you look at Operation Blackout, that much of the foot of Bat kind of looks the same, but then he has claws that aren't there. So it almost looks like they adapted that and just removed the clawed feet, but then the rest of the figure doesn't really look anything like the Operation Blackout Bat to me.
My theory is that they were going to go full Operation Blackout on the Bat.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe in that kind of deco, the black and the yellow deco and stuff, the orangey bits. But then I think they just went, right, let's scrap that and then do a fully, a fully vintage style Bat.
Yeah, and it's a daring thing, because I think that it would almost be scary, because there definitely was a lot of the fandom that was, excited about the line, and they were posting about it online, and there was a lot of feedback regarding the gold parts and all the other things that weren't quite like the vintage figures, but yet the toy line was selling out
Yeah.
everywhere. And it was impossible to find. So
I think that is there a thing there, Pat, where you've got, because something's really hot, it's like the hot thing of the moment, everyone's talking about it, so the talk basically has to the talk has to be of something. Do you know what I mean? And obviously there's going to be criticism in that. There's going to be, there's going to be a lot of like picking it apart. We do it all the bloody time, like literally tearing things apart. And I mean, do you think there's an aspect to that? Like the fact that it is really hot, that of course you're just going to get this.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that it's almost a scary decision to change the direction of a line that is selling out.
Yeah.
So that I think is an interesting thing to do. But to be honest, if they come out with that bat that looks like it did in Operation Blackout, it was a pretty cool looking design. I think that will just sell too. Are we going to get those parts down the road in some other fashion? Maybe not. Maybe they won't find a spot for that, because we do have other things coming, like in other characters. But, and I expect to see the bat that they did release probably in a few more colors before they would move on to a newly designed bat.
Yeah.
But hopefully this line has some legs to it, and we get several years out of it, a good 10-year toy line. And who knows what the future holds. The other interesting thing about listening to fans so much over G.I. Joe is that G.I. Joe is the one thing at Hasbro where they don't have like another company that they kind of have to listen to or send it off to. Whenever they're doing a Marvel or a Star Wars, obviously they need to send that off to Disney, get approvals for things. And I'm sure creatively they probably get a lot of input and a lot of control happening there. G.I. Joe, they have control over it, but they did listen to fans quite a bit. And there were those field variants. We didn't even mention those.
Oh, yeah, that's a good shout. Yeah, I mean, do you think that did... I mean, like, okay, well, I really like the Duke figure. I'm not going to lie. I thought the Duke was pretty cool. Roadblock I really enjoyed as that version 2. Snake Eyes, obviously Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes was a funny one for me because when he first came out, I was blown away. I thought Snake Eyes was the coolest upgrade kind of design. I thought he looked really, really awesome. I thought it was different enough from all the other like versions that had come out to make him like really cool again. Because, like, let's face it, we get fatigued with some of these characters, don't we? I mean, seriously, to have, like, hundreds of Snake Eyes figures, literal hundreds of them, to come out with something that was like, whoa, that's really cool. So the deluxe, when they brought that out, I was blown away. Were you guys into that Snake Eyes when he first came out?
Not as much as you, but I did like it.
I'm still a 4-inch, 3 3/4. It's a lot easier to say 4-inch. Especially when typing it.
3.75.
That's the size that I gravitate toward. There have been a few times now in Classified where I look at a design and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I'd really love that as a 4-inch figure.
Yeah.
It's just what I prefer. I've said it a few times that the reason why I am continuing to buy the 6-inch line is because they're doing such a stellar job with it. I do think that I've always thought that there's a spot for 6-inch G.I. Joe, but to be honest, I didn't realize how popular it would be. I kind of thought that what they could do, I kind of felt like it was silly for so long that they didn't do it, because clearly to me, if you released a Snake Eyes, a Duke, a Cobra Commander, Storm Shadow, Destro, those ones were like sure sales at retail. Like that's just money that had been waiting for Hasbro to just take it.
Yeah.
They could have done a good job, a mediocre job, whatever they wanted with those characters and just taken the money. But then some of the things that are kind of flying off the shelves and are really getting a lot of attention are things that I didn't know were going to be a huge hit as 6-inch things. Years ago, whenever I was like, why haven't they done 6-inch? But yeah, so whenever they showed Snake Eyes in 6-inch form, that first figure, I was eager to get it in hand and to see what a job they were doing. I was also happy to see that their approach to G.I. Joe was to give it a whole lot of articulation and to make it actually a very fun to play with action figure when maybe compared to other 6-inch action figures that have been out.
I remember when that first came out, I think it was, I want to say Fred Axon, he posted on Instagram my figure actually that came in, because I showed, because he hadn't got it yet, so it came into me and he asked if he could borrow it to have a look at it, and I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll go to the boss fight, hand it to him in his office, leave, come back, pick it up when we left and everything, and I get back home and he's taken loads of pictures of it and posted them on Instagram, and it's like he got it in a position that I don't think I've even seen a Spider-Man figure in. Like, it was like, the head was up, like the leaning down, hand on the ground, like it was incredible. Like, he's really good at that anyway, posing figures, but it just showed me just like, I usually just stand them up, have them like looking cool, but like there's something to that figure and to a lot of the figures where the articulation is so crazy. Like, you can get them in so many cool positions. Something that, like obviously the O-ring line is great, and obviously it's really cool, but there are certain things, limits in certain poses they can do, holding weapons and stuff like that. So to be able to get, to be able to get it into like really cool positions, sniper positions and stuff like that is great. I always think of, and again, it's still a great figure, but in the 4-inch modern line, the low light figure, who was like covered in gear and couldn't actually get in a sniper position. He couldn't get his head back, let alone like, get the gun in that position. And obviously you can get figures in a 4-inch in that position now, but I feel like with the 6-inch series, there's like a really, I don't know, there's just a lot of cool poses you can get them in.
Yeah, I actually was having a little trouble with my bat the other day. It was something that I kind of thought, if they're going to do snipers and if they're going to do a Navy SEAL, that you need to make sure that the head is able to rotate back quite a bit. One of the things I was trying to do with the bat was to mimic that kind of hunched over but looking up pose.
Can you do that again, Pat? Just do that again for me.
New show intro.
I think that's your new show intro. People are going to see that at the beginning and be like, what is going on? And then that'll make a lot more sense at this point. That's genius, by the way.
Yeah, but I hope that some of the articulation doesn't get lost along the way. I kind of, that's as far up as a bat can look. I'd like him to look a little bit farther.
Actually break
and I
his
took
neck.
the head off. Well, you can pop the head off, obviously. It's meant to be. But the barbell that's in there doesn't really have a big range of motion.
Yeah, that's as far as it goes. I mean, like I could probably like forgive that a little bit on like the robot. Do you know what I mean? Like, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
But that was kind of my thought. Was I've enjoyed the articulation in these, and Snake Eyes did better than this. I hope that they make sure, going into like snipers and frogmen of any kind, that they can look up, because that's an important thing.
Yeah, like your hit and runs and your footlooses and your low lights and your those kind of guys.
I would like everybody to be able to do that, but like you said, I can kind of forgive that in a robot.
Yeah, which is ironic because robots can do friggin' anything, can't they? Yeah. What about kind of like favorite figures in the line? Let's talk about those just quickly before we move into our next segment. And then we'll talk about like an overall kind of like how it started versus how it's going effectively. Adam, what's like your highlight from like, and you got to pick one. You can't pick 15 or 2 or 91 or anything like that. Pick one figure that you've had that just kind of ticks all the boxes for you so far in the classified line.
Man, that is so tough.
I'm horrible, aren't I?
Really
I'm a nasty piece of work sometimes.
Every time, even though you said pick one, I'm like ready to be like, okay, so I'm going to rattle off 20 that I think have redeeming qualities. But
no, you can. I'm just messing around with you.
I don't know. I'm going to play by the rules. If I'm only going to say one, I'm just going to say Prophet Director Destro. And it's not because I think it's the best figure in the line or the most range of motion or anything. It just makes me feel good. Yeah. I love the way that figure looks. It's funny, it's eye-catching, and also for being so early in the line, a pretty left field choice, which to kind of circle back to everything we've talked about, I appreciate, because, we have core character syndrome, and so to get something that was so, like, not really obscure, but unexpected that early in a line, I think really scored points with me.
Absolutely. And also, the accessories he comes with were really kind of inspired as well, weren't they?
Oh, That does bring up a design thing I guess we should talk about real quick. One of the big things that this line had that G.I. Joe had never had prior to this is the direct inkjet printing on the faces, which I think, like, you said, like, Scarlet has a great head sculpt. Well, like, a lot of the figures have had great head sculpts that have been ruined by bad paint.
Yeah,
so I think that having the ability now to get this extremely high-def printing on there and bring out details, freckles and moles and stuff that you never would have otherwise seen that really bring these sculpts to life, I think has kind of shined a whole new light on just how good some of these sculpts are. And, like, in that Destro's case, the leopard print fabric on his cape is actually printed on. It's not just like a Tampa with black spots or something. It actually has, like, texture and feel and depth, and it gives it a lot of extra weight. So I think that's another thing that really immediately impressed me about that figure.
Absolutely. Yeah, good shout on that one, actually. What about you, Pat? You've been thinking in the background there, haven't
my favorite? What?
Have you been thinking in the background there or not? Have you just, like...
Yeah, I actually opened up the Generals Joe's Reborn super page.
Yeah, the one that hasn't been updated in a year. Justin,
hurry up, mate. Come on. We call it out all the time.
I think that I'm going to actually... It's a little bit strange for me because as far as the fiction of G.I. Joe goes, I really love the comic book. I'm much more about the comic book than I am the Sunbow cartoon. So for me to pick Beachhead as my favorite one so far is probably surprising more to me than to anyone else. But the reason why is that I think that is the one that achieves the balance of new and vintage the best, because the beret comes off. You don't have to put it on the figure if you don't like it, because we've never really seen Beachhead with that beret on his head. But it is there on the vintage figure, and whenever I saw that on Beachhead, the way that they had done it, I really just loved it, because the fact that the vintage figure has it means that at some point the character Beachhead must wear it. Now, whether or not he takes the balaclava
I'd
off,
imagine he'd take the balaclava
on his head, yeah, I would imagine that too. But just the fact that I now have that, which is an aspect that's kind of always been there but has been sidelined about the character, I thought was cool. I actually also thought that the Nerf rifle was a neat thing to do, because at that point Classified was making up the weapons, and why wouldn't you use weapons that have already tested well with a crowd of people? There's various Nerf blasters that are more popular than others, and I think that it's interesting to toss a few of them in. I'd still like to see more of them. It's not like I want the entire toy line to go Nerf, but a Nerf nod here and there. There were some cool things in the 25th line that they did that felt similar to me. Like, if you look at Snowjob on his leg, he actually has Pocket Patrol there. There were times where they were making nods to various things.
Did he mail away for that?
Right. I don't know if he mailed away for it, or if it was just sitting there. I mean, it's maybe it's actually Rapid Deployment Force, because it is black rather than green. But
Wolf.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that I would pick Beachhead as my favorite one so far.
That's a good shout, actually. I do like that one. I think for me, and this is weird because like I don't think it's a balance at all. I think they've just gone full on vintage, and it's not. And I don't even know like why I like it so much, because it wasn't even my first version of the figure. But Roadblock, heavy assault machine gun Roadblock, I think is awesome. I love the helmet. I love the build. I love the deco. I just think that obviously it screams vintage, and then it also like it's also kind of like teasing me to say that there might be a Tiger Force version of this around the corner, and you know what I'm like about that. Like I'd probably put Outback up there too, but obviously not having him in hand, I'd rather wait till he's actually kind of fully come out first. But I mean, there's so many, and you're right. I'm going to go with heavy assault It is heavy assault, isn't it? Heavy artillery Roadblock. Thank you. Sorry. Right, the last thing I want to ask you about the design kind of situation. One, do you think it was necessary? And I'll ask that first before piling loads of questions on you. Adam, do you think it was a necessary change they had to make, or how do you feel about it in that sense?
I don't think they needed to make such a hard line change. I don't think it needed to go straight to I think there was little things, like for example with the Nerf accessories. I don't think that the issue so much was that they were Nerf accessories, so much as that they were molded in solid color. Like maybe if they'd had more deco to make them look a little more real world, little things like that. I think that it could have evolved. I don't think it needed to be so hard line that we're going from futuristic sort of video game inspired to the 80s that you know and love. I think there was maybe a little bit more of a happy medium.
Yeah.
But I can't argue with the results. People are clearly eating this lineup. It's the distribution's getting better. People seem to be digging it. Everyone is buying everything. Everything's still selling out. So can't argue with results.
Absolutely. And what about you, Pat? I mean, do you think it was a necessary scenario?
I do. I opened up the Alley Viper, and I have to say I actually like the 4-inch figure better. One that came out, a while back. It has the removable helmet. It has the baton in the shield. There's just some aspects that I think are just preferable about the 4-inch figure than the 6-inch. So it kind of puts them in a weird spot to have to outdo. And obviously, clearly that figure was also pivoting. So there's probably budgetary constraints and things that they had to do quickly. But it puts them in a weird spot to have to do something that's so more easily compared to something that's already been out. I thought that they really nailed the visor. I like the pointiness of the edges of it. But there's just something that whenever I opened the figure, I kind of felt like I've already been here and already kind of have all the fun of this figure in another form many years ago, is kind of how I felt whenever I opened it, which it isn't the most positive thing, but I do kind of feel like if they would have gone too new, that we'd be missing this. Yeah. So like I've said many times already, we kind of needed to get this one out of the way and then move on to other things. And Alley Viper is an interesting one because there are several vintage ones that kind of could be hit upon. There's 3 vintage ones, 3 vintage Alley Vipers that all 3 of those would be nice, especially the black and yellow Alley Viper. I want to see that one
with the big,
and he's not the same
big Cobra shield. Yeah,
people tend to think that Alley Viper is just a repaint of version 1 Alley Viper. No, in the vintage line, that's just not the case. He uses the same legs, but it's a relatively new figure, new visor,
new shield,
retooled head, different shield, different torso. It's a different figure. So I'd be curious to see if maybe they would allow some of those other parts that got abandoned to maybe be used if they have them available and go on to a black and yellow.
I think you just have Pittsburgh sports bias.
No, I may have a Pittsburgh bias, but not a sports bias of any kind.
You're not a Steelers guy.
It is weird to me when I hear like you be like, yeah, Dolphins. I'm like, that's just so odd to me. Growing up, everybody likes Steelers, and I'm like, whatever, okay. I moved to Ohio then, and I'm like, everybody Browns. And they're like, no, Steelers still Steelers. And
they want to be associated with a winner.
And no one's into the Browns at all, I take it.
Not well. The ones who are
certainly not
very dedicated fans. There are no fair weather fans of the Browns. Because there's no fair weather.
Of course, because there's 0 weather. Right. Just finally, kind of in summation, I don't think it was a necessary thing they had to do. I think finding that balance with figures like Beachhead, where you've got like that kind of figure a little bit updated, I think that's where I was expecting it to just be. That's where I was expecting it to be, in that kind of like middle ground, a little bit of updated kind of aspects, but then like you can tell who it is like immediately. So I'm surprised they're going so hardcore onto into kind of the vintage designs now, but we're still getting a Stalker with a cool little addition to him. So that's, again, that to me is like playing within that little balance again. So I'm glad that it's not completely gone from the line. I'm glad they're trying new stuff out, as well as just, pumping out vintage figures in a much bigger size. But anyway, that is, I suppose, how it is versus how it's going, guys. Next up, though, and this is really what I wanted to get into, to the age-old debate of our favourite versions of certain characters. So let's Let's get into that, shall we? Hey there guys, just wanted to let you know about an app that I've been helping to develop for a few years now called Hoarder. But what is Hoarder, I hear you scream? Well, a number of years ago I discussed a project with a good friend of mine and now co-owner/developer about an app that could help collectors of all shapes and sizes. I'm talking about the shapes and sizes of the collections really, but also people. The app would be a place where you could share your new items, build collections and sub-collections, or just browse the feed to see cool things. Well, we made it. We tested it for a number of years, and now it's out there for you to enjoy on iOS or Android devices. You can upload a single item at a time at your own pace and slowly build your collections. You can post status updates that could be related to your collections, like getting a delivery or posting a scene in which you can tag items in that image if you've uploaded them in the past. You can add tags to your items in order to easily search for and find them, and of course to add them into your respective collections. You can like posts, comment on them, or start a conversation with a fellow collector, directly message users you follow, and even add items you see on your feed to your want list. If you prefer to use your computer or laptop, have no fear, you can use the website browser version and even utilise the awesome inventory option, allowing any user to change certain details, add notes, upload bulk items from spreadsheet files, and download a CSV of your entire itemised collection. We made this app for collectors, and we hope that you enjoy using it as much as we enjoyed creating it. Now get to hoarding. Right, we've been threatening this for far too long, so we decided to add another segment to the end of every monthly episode now called Version Therapy. So what's that all about then, I hear you collectively scream? Well, it's where we choose a single G.I. Joe or Cobra character and have a discussion on what action figure version is their best. Now, of course, we're all probably going to have different opinions on this based on when we were born, personal experience and so on, but that's where the fun lies. Feel free to also let us know who your favourite action figure version is and why in the comments below as well. So who have we got first then, lads? Let's go with the obvious one, and a lot of viewers and listeners probably all know the answer to, or at least for two of the presenters so far, and that is Snake Eyes. And seeing as Adam is our like not as often seen guest host today, we'll start with you, Pat. I'm joking, Adam. Who's your favourite Snake Eyes, buddy? And tell us exactly why in 28 minutes or less.
Well, I think for the sake of this conversation, most people are probably going to be expecting an answer to come out of one of the vintage versions. So I'm gonna talk through it a little bit.
Go for it.
Of the 6 original versions, I don't think there's a single bad figure. I guess I should preface with that. I think every single one of them has their own merits. And obviously, knowing my love of Ninja Force, you'd think maybe that was the direction, and by proxy, Shadow Ninjas. But the limited ability of articulation with the T-crotch kicking thing doesn't work for me. So that disqualified them. Version 1, Commando, iconic figure. I like it, but also pretty basic. And so I think that kind of leaves us down to 2, 3, and 4. And version 3 was the first one I had as a kid. I think that the accessories that figure comes with are absolutely brilliant. The nunchuck piece that connects together with the chains, the backpack with the slide-in sword, the blowgun. I mean, just awesome stuff.
I didn't know what that was for so long, by the way.
Oh, me either. For like 20 years, I was like, why does he come with a big stick?
Why does he come with layers like bounty hunter disguise weapon? I just had no clue what it was.
It says in the package blowgun.
I never read it, mate. I swear to you, I'd have just cut the file card out and moved on, like straight up.
Yeah, the amount of people that are like, would reference things from file cards or stuff like that I'm like, I was like well into, like 2022 before I was like, huh? I was today years old. So it's such a toss-up though. Version 4, obviously, we both have a lot of love for, and I think version 4. I have a special connection to because of media, because he's in the D cartoon, he's in the comic, video game. So for me, it's got to be between 3 and 4. And I think if you ask me on any given day, that could change. I think aesthetically, I like 4 the best, but I think sentimentally, I'm going to go with 3 because I just think it's such a fun figure and the accessories and everything. And then I guess when we've all kind of gotten our votes in, if you want to have a little honorable mention chat, there are a few Contrary to popular belief, G.I. Joe still existed past 1994. So
I will. Yeah, we'll come back to that
I'll have a
definitely.
few shouts then.
Definitely. Okay, so it looks like Pat's already won this game. Pat, go on then. Tell us who your favorite Snake Eyes is, buddy.
Well, okay. I will. It's Snake Eyes version 3.
No,
And-
really?
Oh, you don't say. Look at that
It is.
shirt.
Yeah, you
Look
might
at
have
him.
guessed.
Look at him, giving it the big un.
Why aren't you wearing your Snake Eyes version 4 shirt?
Oh, all right.
Is it because they haven't made one?
That's not true. He's on.
Chris made one himself. It's got a little pocket. I've seen it.
Thank you. Why am I not wearing that? Anyway,
I don't know.
idiot.
No, it's version 3, and there's a good reason for that. 1985, I was still into G.I. Joe, just to a decent degree, and I was also very into Transformers. But I needed to scale back. My family didn't have tons of money coming in, so G.I. Joe kind of got put in the back burner. I did get a couple of figures still in 1986. 1987, I don't really remember getting anything. 1988, there was a couple of things on clearance. My brother got Destro version 2, but G.I. Joe kind of was set aside. And then one of my good friends, my best friends of my entire life, he unfortunately passed away at the beginning of 2020, but I was at his house and he was like, hey, we need to look at my G.I. Joes. And he shows me Snake Eyes version 3. And it hit every mark for me of that character that I loved. And one of the things that I always dreamed of prior to the 1989 lineup was a G.I. Joes that came with tons of accessories. I remember seeing Blizzard in 88 and being like, wow, because if you compare Blizzard to Snow Job, or especially to Iceberg.
Oh God, yeah, Iceberg with one
accessory
gun.
Complement,
Yeah.
the accessories that started coming with those figures was just outstanding. And Snake Eyes, certainly, he had tons of stuff. And the reason why I think that it encapsulates the character so well is that Snake Eyes kind of was introduced to us as a commando, and he had this ninja backstory. It wasn't a situation where he's the ninja dressed in black and he's on the team, which is often how he kind of is portrayed now.
Yeah.
He was the commando who had a history of being a ninja prior. And he still has the boots on. So this Snake Eyes, in my mind, still is dressed in very much a commando style. But he has these goggles on that kind of run a balance of, hey, these are weird goggles that are kind of a callback to the fact that I was wearing something weird in my version 2. Version 2 visor, obviously the most iconic Snake Eyes visor. It's the unique one, but head to toe, all told, I prefer Snake Eyes version 3. I think the sculpting on it is amazing. There are aspects of the figure that got lost over time. One of my favorite things in the 25th line is the fact that the thing that was supposed to be on the side of his head, that the night vision goggles, that was brought back. He also should have had, there's the clip of the back of the Uzi that really was meant to clip on his side on a thing that was there. That was lost. The 25th brought it back. I just love the fact that they did that at that point, but it felt like it was very specific, a thing made specifically for me, because those were things that I would have wanted brought back to that figure if they were to bring that figure back. Even with the O-ring stuff coming back out, it's like, man, if they did that Snake Eyes again, if they would put back in some of the things that were lost along the way, that would be cool. Even looking at his backpack, you've seen his backpack a couple of times. It ended up on Night Creeper, but it has all those blowgun darts in the back of it.
Mate, I'm telling you, I'm not that observant of things, I swear. I am more so now when I'm looking for it, but as a kid, I just did not know what it was at all. It's so obvious.
Got, timing claws. He's definitely got some of the fun ninja stuff. And then, you read the comics how Snake Eyes collects knives. Well, he's got a couple of knives right on his chest. That's the character Snake Eyes. I love this figure.
Awesome. You've actually your story of that. I'm just going to go with version 3. I think I think
you can't at this point.
No, I'll talk you through my reasoning. If we're talking vintage, we'll get into like beyond vintage 2 in a second. But if we're talking straight up vintage 82 to 94, then I've just got the most love. And I know people are like, but like, why? And sometimes I can't explain it. But version 4 for me, I'm not saying is the quintessential Snake Eyes. I've never said that is the iconic, quintessential, that's the Snake Eyes. I've never said that. What I've said is he's my favorite version of Snake Eyes. There's a difference. If you were to say to me, what's the most iconic Snake Eyes? Version 2, 100%, no doubt.
Yep.
That's the iconic one. Visor, timber, that's your lot. It's the one that is like, you see it in all of the new things, in all of the updated, upgraded, up-styled new kind of designs. You see timber brought back, and you see the visor and all that kind of stuff. So like, for me, that's the one, right? The first one is like still hugely iconic, but I would argue kind of gets almost wiped off the face of the earth by version 2, but just in terms of how they are spaced out in the history of the line. So yeah, like even though one has got like that strong connection to a lot of people from that era, it's just wiped out in terms of iconic because of that version 2. Anyway, version 3 is a superb figure. If we were going to talk about what's the best, like, Snake Eyes action figure in the vintage line, I'd argue that version 3 is probably that's the best figure to play with. Like it's got the really cool posability, loads of great articulation on that figure too. Like that's something that I've talked about in the past with how certain O-ring figures you struggle to get them in poses and stuff like that. But that figure's great and it's really posable. And those he holds the weapons really well too. Like it's a really like interesting figure as well, like loads of cool stuff, swords in sheaths, blooming loads of cool stuff going on. The 3-part nunchuck weapon is just unreal. Like that's so cool. And he's like, you drape him in all this gear and he looks amazing, like absolutely amazing. And even that like blow dart gun thing is just bonkers, but it's like so cool and so interesting. So there's loads to love on that figure, absolutely. But in terms of the figure that I have the most love for, the one that I look at and go, God, that is a cool figure. God, he looks so awesome. I love the artwork. I love the deco. I love the big ass goggles. Version 4 for me wins outright every single time, and it's like I said, it's for different reasons than what is the most iconic, what is the best figure. It just looks so different as well. And then it was at that sweet spot when I was growing up where we had the Hall of Fame, we had what else we have in that 90s era? Obviously they had that figure, the Deep cartoon, which I was aware of but hadn't really seen a lot of, so that's probably out of it for that. But then like in the comics as well, like that design popped up for like 20 seconds, like maybe 3 or 4 issues, maybe more than that actually. It kind of overlapped a little bit with the Ninja Force in the comics, didn't it, as well?
Yeah, for some reason I always associate that figure almost more with Ninja Force than the actual Ninja Force figure, I think because of those comics.
Yeah, totally.
And because that era, they had the really like vibrant covers that Andrew Wildman did that came with trading cards and stuff. Those always felt kind of special. Yeah,
absolutely. And yeah, so like I think so at the time, I just gravitated to that because it was so different too. And also, I'll tell you what, the nostalgia that connected to that is that it was on a second trip to the US, maybe second or third trip to the US, where I bought that in the US. So that was a figure that I got in the United States. I believe we got it in the UK as well, but that was one I picked up like a year prior to it coming out in the UK. So I remember that being one of the many figures I've yoinked that trip. And again, it has so much like, that enjoyment of that trip as well, and seeing again like figures just filling the aisles, which was so like as a kid, like that was like the norm, like seeing Action Force or G.I. Joe like filling an aisle was the norm. Like that was like, I would go into Gerald's, or I'd go into Toy Master, or I'd go into these, you probably don't know any of these, go into Langley's, or any of these places in the UK. and there would be absolute walls of this stuff. It was unreal.
Yeah, you want me to translate that for our American viewers? Toys R Us, Service Merchandise, Lionel Playworld, KB Toys, Children's Palace.
Exactly. And when we went to the States, it was Toys R Us. There was a couple of other places we went to, like maybe not necessarily like toy places, but like department store type things. I can never remember which ones they were, because I know we went to like Sam's Club and we went to all those kind of different places as well, but I'm pretty sure we wouldn't have seen toys there. So I think it was Toys R Us and maybe another kind of toy based, toy section in another store, like a department store. And just seeing aisles and aisles of this stuff, and then that connection then to that seeing that Snake Eyes on card. And in my head, Snake Eyes is this visor, timber, all black ninja dude. To then see that, and also in '89, Pat, I did pick up version 3 Snake Eyes, so I got him in the US too. I have a strong connection to that figure. The only reason I bitch about it so much is just because of the jokey thing we have going on within the episode. Yeah. I love that figure. Don't get me wrong, I love that figure. But version 4 for me, when I saw in the different colors, I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I don't know, there was just something like, I don't know, that just became my default Snake Eyes at that point.
It's funny, as a kid, I got 3 first, and I think I was so used to the media telling me that Snake Eyes is all black that figure was almost jarring in the same way that the Cobra Commander with the glider was. Or I was like, that's not Snake Eyes. Like, it just didn't connect. And I think my appreciation for it just grew and grew over the years. And you were talking about color. It's a very bold, like, brave design. You didn't see another Snake Eyes with that much of a leap in color for 20 years after this. I mean, if you go through the Yo-Jo, just like scroll through Snake Eyes, you'll see that by and large, they're all black, dark gray, dark silver, like
color change.
This figure like really stands out. It was a real leap in design. I give them props for being that brave at that time.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it sound like that I don't appreciate version 4. Like you said, most of the reason I bicker about it is just to tease you.
I feel like we've ruined that bit on the show now. Like, now we're just going to be like, we've got to come up with a new like.
Yeah, we both kind of all love Snake Eyes. I'm going to have to be like, speed metal is the best heavy metal. It's something crazy.
We'll have to come up with another. Well, obviously, version therapy is going to open this door for us to discuss these, and I really love this kind of idea of going through like the vintage, and then, well, what we'll do now, Adam, as well, we'll come back to you, mate, and we'll talk about some of those honourable mentions that you were discussing, because there are a lot, and I would have to argue and to say that even though we're sticking with vintage on this version therapy thing, there are probably other figures that would probably jump ahead of Snake Eyes version 4 for me as well in that sense. But go ahead.
So I think part of the reason why those original 6 figures, and really especially the original 4, are so iconic to us is because at the time you got one Snake Eyes every 4 or 5 years. And at that time, that was even kind of uncommon. Like, there's quite a few iconic characters that only have 1 or 2 versions. So that really tells you just how important Snake Eyes was even then.
Totally.
And I think now it's harder to really have something iconic because you get 25 Snake Eyes figures a year. But I made a little cheat sheet here to kind of have. I'm gonna call out 3 honorable mentions. Version 36, the Radiation Glow from the DVD pack.
I did like that one.
Unfortunately, they're all discolored now. But his torso wasn't made with the best plastic. But not that it's the greatest figure. Doesn't have like the best articulation or anything. But I always loved that episode in the cartoon, the Blind Woodsman, and I think that seeing the translucent limbs on a Snake Eyes figure was just a really, really interesting, unique thing. So that's a good one. Version 48, City Strike Snake Eyes. One of my absolute favorite of the sort of, we'll call them off-screen Rise of Cobra figures. Just a really, really cool design. He almost in some way feels like an evolution of version 4 too. Like he's got sort of a kind of a paintball mask. The gray and black looks really cool. And he comes with that rappelling rope. He's got those really cool shoes too that like they sort of look like almost like futuristic Nikes or something. The baggy pants, just a really, really cool design. Extremely posable too.
Yeah.
That was one of those figures that like as I was really like getting deep into the modern era, he really stood out. Like I found myself constantly just posing that one and hanging it from the rope and stuff, and just really awesome. And finally, the one that I think if you ever wanted to call a Snake Eyes post 94 iconic, I think this is the one. Version 54, Pursuit of Cobra, Wave 1, Desert Battle Snake Eyes. A little bit of the luster has come off this figure due to the fact that it's been re-released 3 times now.
54, guys. Holy
This
crap.
is the one with the elastic straps hanging down. He's got the Commando Desert Battle. I believe, was this one sculpted by Fred or Dave? It's one of them.
It's one of those two crazy. Yeah.
And I want to even say, to make this figure that much cooler, I think this is one of the final figures, or from that era, that was actually sculpted by hand and wax, which makes it that much crazier when you think about how much detail is on this figure. I mean, not to in any way say that 3D sculpting is easy by any means, but to think that amount of texture and detail was done by hand and wax at that size is just mind-blowing. But that figure is just so well designed. He's since been re-released in the 50th line and in the retro Walmart line. Well, we'll call it a re-release. Minor differences, but that figure, it's as close to iconic as I've seen post 94. I mean, it's just I think that figure is universally beloved. I've never heard a single person say they don't like that figure. That's a big shouts to him.
Any for you, Pat, that stand out in the honorable mentions department?
Okay, some of the ones that really stand out for me, as weird as it is, and I don't know if I really want to stick so much to the version numbering that's on Yojo because of the fact that, they left out the built to rule. Or I should say, we left out the built to rule.
that was all you, mate.
But yeah, some of the numbers are going to be close, I think, for posterity, but not everybody may agree quite on the version numbers once you get into the 50s. But I'm going to start not in any. Well, I'm going to start just doing them in order because I'm looking at Yojo doing this. I think one of the standouts for me is version 13, the purple and gray one. That was a situation where they did go brave and went with something new, and then fans reacted and they went with the colors. I mean, does this sound familiar?
Yep.
They went with the colors that were more familiar. It was very much the same thing, and you quickly got version 14 Snake Eyes, which I don't know, maybe that was actually the plan all along. Because it stretches out the budget a little bit,
and sometimes
it out of one sculpt,
and sometimes it lines up so that Hasbro can say that as if they are listening as well, doesn't it?
Right? Yeah. And sometimes I kind of view some of these as what I call a pre-paint. It's like prior to the color that they knew we wanted, they're doing this repaint that may or may not make sense and introducing it first. Everyone gobbles it up because of the sculpt. And then the color comes out that we want. We go, oh, no, I've
got to get that one as well.
By Tiger Force Outback.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that this version of Snake Eyes is one that maybe a gray and purple Snake Eyes would be a fun thing to revisit because of this one, because that was very put out there and on catalogs and inserts and things like that a lot at the time. So that one stands out to me.
We'll call him Grurple. We'll call him Grurple Snake Eyes.
Okay, sure. Grurple? I think that's a flavor, not a color.
Well, that Snake Eyes is flavored then. Grurple flavor.
Okay. Well, I don't know what the flavor of the next one is, other than military. But I'm going to go with Classified version 1.
That was the one I was going to go with. Yeah, I agree. Love that.
He so represents such an iconic moment and snapshot in that character's life.
And a really well-executed figure.
One time we've gotten that. What?
Really well-executed figure as well. Like it's a kind of under the radar job, isn't it, really?
Yeah, they were definitely cobbling together parts back then to make what they could for those comic packs, doing a new head here and there. And for this one, they actually didn't do any new parts. It's the head off of, I believe, Hawk, and then Crosshair's hat backwards repainted, and tilted down and glued on. So it's definitely, they went with what they could, but ended up making one of the best figures of that toy line at the time.
Yeah, the little comic packs, they were great, weren't they? For that,
Yeah.
that comic pack was one of the. I remember that at the time as well, seeing that and going, "Oh, I really want that one like so bad." Obviously, got all of them, but like it was, that was the one. That was the one I was like really interested in seeing, because there's an element of that. This always reminds me of things like I'm not sure if you ever knew about that Inspector Gadget figure, the Claw, who they revealed basically in the toy form. The face of, by putting a sticker in front of it on the thing. So when you open it and get it out, you finally see the head of the Claw from Inspector Gadget, which was like totally cool and genius, like marketing move and everything. And the head is hilarious. I'm flashing it up now. It is an absolute bonkers design. But like, there's that element, isn't there? Like with Hall of Fame, I thought because there was a removal. Is this what you're going to say, Adam? Because you can say it if you want.
Oh, no, that's exactly what I was going to say. That and the other one is Dick Tracy's The Blank, too. But I'll let you have your Hall of Fame thing. Go for it. We're right there, though, dog. Same way of
exactly. Like they make it clear that there are removable like headpieces on Snake Eyes and Cobra Commander, and so that makes you want to buy it to then open and look at, and then you see like it's the guy's head but with the mask on it. Like, he's wearing a mask under a mask. What is he, like Captain Mask Face? The similar kind of thing with the Declassified figure. All of a sudden, you think you're going to unlock all of this like interesting, mysterious stuff. Like maybe the file card's going to have more on it. Maybe there'll be and the fact that they put the picture of his sister. Oh my god!
I also love the painted shadow brim on the eyes to kind of further. Oh, and the other thing that really got me was on the file card. They redact his name, but they leave just enough of certain letters that you're like, maybe I could figure out.
It's great. I love that kind of stuff.
It really is.
Yeah. So yeah, good shout on that one, Pat. Any more, mate, that you want to ruin for me as well? I'm just kidding.
You know what? I'm just going to kind of run through Pursuit of Cobra. I really think that we got a couple of greats in Pursuit of Cobra. The one that Adam already mentioned is, I mean, how many times did they reuse parts from that figure?
Lots.
For good reason.
The shock trooper of...
Yeah, the shock trooper of G.I. Joe. Yeah, really.
Yep.
Such an outstanding figure. I'm so glad that I have that one in 4-inch form. It's one of the best. It's not just one of the best Snake Eyes figures. It's one of the best G.I. Joe figures. That
period of time was great, wasn't it? Like so great. And even like after that in Retaliation and stuff like that, there was some really good stuff that came out of that whole period of time. That was a great era for Joe fans.
Yeah, and I'm going to go a little bit out of order and kind of combine two of them together for talking about going with the original idea and going with a creative idea. We actually in the 25th line have Training Snake Eyes, where you have the Snake Eyes in his training outfit that he looked like in the comic book. They went with gray. I think they could have gone a little bit darker with a black, but then it would have maybe looked like the Storm Shadow figure that had already been released, which was the same mold.
But if they had, they wouldn't all be a yellow-green color today. So maybe they should have with the...
Right.
Yeah.
But that was a great one. And then we also got in Pursuit of Cobra, the other Training Snake Eyes, that just had, again, a wonderful complement of accessories and that ornate design that's on the chest armor. It's just a very good looking figure that is not like the other Snake Eyes figures. And I love it for so many of those reasons.
If I'm remembering correctly, is that the one that used some of the pieces that was going to come from the Budo figure that was canceled?
Well, no, it was going to be a Snake Eyes figure that was canceled. There was a 2-pack of Snake Eyes versus Night Creeper, and Snake Eyes at one point, it's a little weird when you look at the comic. There were actually two different drawn versions of it. One where Snake Eyes is the Retaliation Snake Eyes figure that ended up coming out then in Rise of Cobra, and then came out for not Retaliation. Why did I say that? Resolute. It's the Resolute version of Snake Eyes that did end up coming out in Rise of Cobra. But the comic also prior to that actually featured the Training Snake Eyes. I don't think that wasn't going to be Budo. Budo would have come later, reusing those parts that were made. Well, I guess there was a canceled Budo, but they originate with that Snake Eyes that was canceled first in a comic pack, which actually would have been one of the 2009 comic packs that would have been released as a Resolute training Snake Eyes, I think it is. And then you would have had, Buddha would have used Resolute training Snake Eyes as parts and been released in probably a Walmart 2-pack, I think, for Rise of Cobra. And both of those ended up being canceled. We finally got the parts just as Snake Eyes in Pursuit of Cobra.
That
This
clears
is
it
one
up.
of those situations. Sorry, this is one of those situations of cursed tooling where, like the vest that eventually came out with the FSS8 Blizzard that I think had been on like 6 canceled figures prior to finally seeing the light of day.
Yeah.
I'm going to add on these Snake Eyes ones, I'm just going to throw in 2 honourable mentions, and they're kind of linked in a sense, and that's version 18 from 2004, and of course version 35 from 2008, and obviously it's the Arctic comic kind of Snake Eyes, the Quinn necklace and all that kind of jazz. Because for one thing, I always liked it when it wasn't just a straight up Snake Eyes. There was something about it. There was a reason for it, or there was like a mission specific type thing. And the fact that we get like a winter coat, and we get and I thought the 25th, I guess, was it? I think, or the modern 4-inch version, I think is a really awesome figure. I think it just works so well and looks so good. And the original, the comic pack O-ring version's great too. Like, I think they're just 2 really outstanding figures. And I just wanted to throw those in as well on the honourable mentions list. Effectively, we just named every Snake Eyes figure.
So can I throw an even further wrench into this and name an unreleased Snake Eyes figure in the honorable mentions?
Oh my goodness!
For as much as this will be real quick, but for as much as we all have sort of a love affair for version 3, are you guys familiar with the unreleased olive green and gold version 3 figure that looks like it's modeled after the X-Men Toy Biz Spy Wolverine?
I've seen the.
I love that figure so much. And every time one shows up on eBay, which is reasonably common, I always think about, like, maybe this will be the day I pull the trigger, but they keep selling for more and more and more. So those days made it pass me by. He was I don't know if we're still using the midnight Chinese terminology anymore, but if we are, I think that's sort of the run he kind of originated from, like 20 years ago. And
he was the concept for the BJ's set, BJ's exclusive Snake Eyes.
Oh, was that the 8-pack or something? Is that right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, 20 years ago, you probably could have had that figure for like $20 or $30, and now he seems to be more like $400 or $500. So, but awesome design. So, maybe we can show him next to Spy Wolverine.
You know what I thought you were going to say? Because you were like talking about iconic Snake Eyes. I thought you were going to go with Replicator's Snake Eyes.
Oh, man, we're going to give Chris so much fun editing this episode. We'll show up.
Trying to find images. Yeah, my goodness.
Well, don't worry. Pat and I have huge archives. We'll send you this. Dan, oh man, I'm going to botch his last name here. Boovis, I don't know. Did that awesome card art for that figure that was shown many, many years later that I think no one even realized existed, and he was just sitting on it that whole time.
Amazing.
So that gave us kind of a glimpse.
I do love that Replicator's artwork. Yeah. It's so bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe we could get that still. That'd be cool.
That'd be nice.
Release that Replicator Snake Eyes.
I think your odds of that are 0%, but I'd love to see it.
Amazing. Well, lads, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you on this new episode of the Monthly, and obviously our new little segment, which I'm happy with doing this. Like, it's a nice little trip down memory lane as well, and we get to kind of like discuss why we like these figures so much. We'll very likely be doing a similar thing on the next episode of the Monthly, with a figure not too far away from Snake Eyes in terms of I don't know, like the connection to him. I'll just say it was Storm Shadow next week, guys. Next month.
Sword brother? I mean, brothers of the sword.
Yes. Yeah. So looks like we're going to be doing Storm Shadow next month. Adam, do you want to come back and do an O-ring special next month?
Next week or next month?
Definitely next month.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and tentatively say yes to that,
That means it's in. That's happening. Pat, you're on board for an O-ring special, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Ring.
There's a ton of things that I want to discuss. I'm certain that we will sit down and do the O-ring special, and I will leave it feeling like I only talked about like 10% of what I wanted to say. I'm certain that that's what's going to happen.
That's a really nice segue, Pat, because you said earlier in this episode, maybe we could just see like some Nerf accessories once in a while. And, I was right on the cusp of saying, no, Pat, it's Nerf or nothing. But I held that joke this whole time. So thanks for giving me that segue to say that we don't want to leave anything on the table.
I'm glad that you actually did get a chance to say that, Adam. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I had stuff on the table that I was going to say about version 4 Snake Eyes still.
Yeah, but it was all just aggressive against me.
No,
wasn't it?
actually, I really still was going to mention the Impel trading card for Snake Eyes as being my introduction to him.
Oh, nice.
And part of the weirdness of that figure to me was that I knew that a Snake Eyes was coming out. But one of the things the Impel trading card set did is they took some of the art for those figures that were coming out still, and they applied vintage colors to them. Like if you look at Wetsuit, yeah, it's the new Wetsuit with the launcher that should be in black and yellow, but he's in his version 1 colors. And that Snake Eyes is colored to be in mostly black, and he's carrying the swords or the knives that are from version 3. So whenever I finally saw what Snake Eyes we were getting, it took a little bit of an adjustment, but I warmed up to him. I like that version of Snake Eyes. So there was my little tidbit that I was going to put in earlier in the episode and I hadn't said.
Those Impel trading cards were all colored by Paul Mounts, who lives right by me. So I will ask him and he'll have no recollection whatsoever of why he did that.
Also, see if you can get some of his packs sealed, because they go for like 3.5 million nowadays. Right. Guys, thanks a lot. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. I guess we're at the end. Adam, thanks for jumping on, mate. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, let's just end this with if you could just superimpose a picture of a heart with version 3 and 4 Snake Eyes over my face right here.
And of course, Pat, thank you, mate, for jumping on.
Yeah, thanks again. It's always good to be on. I'm happy to talk to Adam. I thought that he was going to be the tiebreaker for us, but somehow he managed to split it right down the middle. And it's still unresolved.
Just when they think they know the answers, I change the questions.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode in this brand new series. Thank you for joining us for the Full Force Monthly. Massive thank you to my awesome co-hosts, Patrick Notpicard Stewart and Adam Mercenary For Hire Riches. See you next month. And as always, 1, 2, 3, Full Force! Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback and questions. We also have a Patreon page, so if you want to show your support for the show, see your name up in lights on these videos, or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/TheFullForce podcast, or click on the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force!